Mentor is not a job title. It's an exchange. It's a relationship that comes from, I think, feeling, that you're changed by somebody.
I think you're the first guest on the show that's been to Bastrop before.
I love Bastrop.
I do too.
I haven't just been here. I have been through the park. I know an 8-mile loop.
I love that run. I know that exact run.
I love that loop.
It's amazing. Can you imagine what it must have been like before the fire, though?
Yeah, I've heard that. And those trees, the umbrella pines, are my favorite trees in the whole world.
Yes.
And they have them in Greece, and they have them here. And those are two of the places that I feel most at home that I've never formally lived. Yeah. And I think those trees are, and there's an umbrella pine on my street as well in LA.
A low-bolly pine?
Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
I want to have more of them near where I live.
They won't grow. So my ranch is in Bastrop County, but not in Bastrop. Mm-hmm. And every time I've bought them and planted them, they've made it like a year and then died. I can't. Really? Yeah, they're an ecological marvel. That's why this is called the lost pines, because basically that Linklater talks about this in Bernie, that this is there's the pine curtain,
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, but so the pine curtain stops in Dallas. It doesn't go much further west than that. Mm-hmm. And then in Bastrop, there's a pocket of them. So that's why they're called the lost pines. They shouldn't be here. They don't go if they're all over the eastern and the southeast of the U.S. Mm-hmm. But there's just this one stand of them. And that's why that fire was so tragic, is that it devastated this stand of trees. It's been here for 10,000 years. That's an ecological fluke. I think running in it, though, after the fire is also cool, because it's I've always thought of it as an elephant graveyard. You're just these big, because a lot of the trees are still standing. They're just burned up.
It is very mystical. There's a hike that I do with what feel like my cousins, even though we're not born cousins. And I just have a deep memory of talking about what they were going to do for their what birthday was it? I think it was when they stopped being teenagers. Oh. That's a big one, right?
Yeah, sure.
What are the big birthdays when you're 18?
16, 18, 21,
16.
30.
No, but 20 also, because you're not a teenager.
Oh, yeah,
I think that's actually very existential.
Yep.
And then the rest after are whatever. I'm talking about what are young people?
Yes.
What gives them what are their turning points? I think it was their 20th that they're most nervous. One. Yeah, because you're in your 20s.
Right.
And
sure.
You're
almost 21, etc.
But you're in your 20s, which is terrifying for people, right?
They're not a teenager anymore.
Yeah.
I remember I went for a walk in Lost Pines Park with my kid. I guess I only had one then, and that's where maybe I had two. I don't remember. But I was like, you know what, let's not do anything this weekend. Let's just go for a hike. We went through a hike. And that's where I had the idea for the series that I'm doing, which I've been working on for 5 years. Just on a random hike, not thinking about work there, I had just a random breakthrough that's consumed me for the last 5 years. So I think about that park all the time. It's one of my favorite places.
Do you, and now I'm I was I want to talk about the park, but I want to ask you about your breakthroughs, because I'm genuinely curious. Do you have a question in the back of your mind that you're trying to answer, and then you just keep it in mind as you're living your life and then let it come to you? When you had that epiphany, did it come out of nowhere that you would even pursue a project at all? Or did you have the idea that I'm trying to think of something and then it came to you then?
Usually what happens is you're finishing a project, like a book or whatever. And so for the first time, you're not all totally consumed with the present of the overwhelming task. Mm-hmm. And you are just starting to get the brain power to consider the future. And then I find it just appears. But I do a microcosm of that every day, which is I usually write in the mornings. Mm-hmm. And then in the afternoons or early evenings, that's when I either run, bike, or swim. And usually something will pop into my head pertaining to what I just worked on that will set me up for tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So the physical creative practice are very linked.
Mm-hmm.
I don't run in that park as much anymore now that I have kids because it's like a drive and it's like I can't be like I'm gonna go work out for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like I just don't have that kind of time. So,
Mm-hmm.
but when I did, I've had so many ideas in that park. It's like I love it. I haven't stayed in any of the cabins. I keep trying to convince my kids that we should do that, but they're like, if we're gonna go somewhere, we should go somewhere. But they're have you seen them? They were built out of like stones in the 30s. They're crazy.
I didn't know you could stay in them.
Yeah. They built like, so the WPA worked on that park. There's a really cool swimming pool in there. And then there's all these like little lodges, little like single family cabins that you can rent.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. That's something I wish I did more of in college because you could rent the cabins at the Dartmouth Grant for like $10 a night for I think as many people as you wanted to have there. And I was like, why did we not do that more? It's like amazing. I mean, we were in college too, so we weren't necessarily like, let's leave and go to the woods. But I wish I had done more of that.
When did you graduate from high school?
High school, 2008.
I think we may have overlapped at some cross country meets because I grew up in Sacramento and I was class of 2005.
What? Like, that makes me feel so, because
we would drive to like the Bay Area all the time. For,
and
like,
what school?
Granite Bay.
Oh, I know Granite Bay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. I think I can picture the uniform.
Yeah, it's green.
Like the font.
Mm-hmm.
I know the font.
That's weird, yeah.
Because that's what you don't know.
What high school were you at?
Bishop O'Dowd in Oakland. And so we would have overlapped not at like a tradition. It would have had
like
to be.
the joint meet. Like
yeah.
I'm
or
forgetting
like,
what they're all called. But
the invitational type
yes.
meets. It's interesting because I only ran my freshman and sophomore year of high school. And
that's the only time we would have.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And then I got kicked off my team. But I wasn't.
I did too.
You did?
Many times, yeah.
What did you do? I didn't do anything.
I would say I didn't do anything. It was like a silly form of rebellion. But in retrospect, it seems insane to me that you would just let 9th and 10th graders be like, go run for 50 minutes and come back. We would just like...
Go swimming?
Yeah, or go play video games, or we would go... I remember one time we just went to a grocery store and bought a cake and then just ate a sheet cake.
Yeah.
You know, like just do nonsense.
Yeah. But that's...
So we just get in trouble and...
They should have allowed that because that kind of mischief is really good for kids, I think, and adults.
Yes.
Like harmless mischief, eating a cake. Like who
Sure,
cares? You
sure.
know?
Yeah, my other friends were doing drugs or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were just not training at all, and I never took it seriously. Like I love running now, and I did not take it seriously for one. The idea that I could be good at this thing and I should try to be my best at it never occurred to me.
And what was occurring to you?
I don't know. Some adult was telling me what to do, and I think in retrospect, it's a very common thing, which is you are afraid of earnestly doing anything because then if you don't succeed, then it doesn't feel bad. I was afraid of that.
That's called sandbagging.
Oh,
that's
sure.
What sandbagging is.
Interesting.
Yes, sandbagging is just the idea that you create in the present like an excuse for your later self to lean on for when you don't succeed. And I had a teammate in Mammoth who would be he was a disciplined athlete, never went out, did everything properly, and then the week of a race would just like get drunk and then like not necessarily run well and then be like, it's because I drank. And it was like, what is that? Because I'm not a sandbagger.
Yeah, clearly.
I don't know, clearly or not. I'm a gamer. Like I will show up beyond what I need to do.
But what'd you get kicked off for?
Oh, I got kicked off my high school cross country and track team because I was a multi-sport athlete and interdisciplinary in that I did theater and student government, and there was a bully on my team. I can firmly say she was a bully, but I forgive her and know that high school is hard and everything is fine. But at the time, it wasn't her. I'm not going to blame her. She was a teenager. The coaches eventually made a rule that you couldn't miss any practices for anything else. And I was doing soccer and student government. And I got kicked off my team for missing a practice to like decorate the school hallway for Spirit Week once because I was vice president.
Yeah.
and I got kicked off because I had soccer practice, and I was like number 2 in California with not going to every practice. And I think the soccer, obviously I loved, not obviously, soccer was what I loved.
Yeah.
Running I didn't love,
Right.
but I was good at, and I was like, I can do this in this context, but I was never just gonna run at that age. And so I got kicked off twice, both years.
Were they trying to send a message, or do you think the coach was just like threatened by you or something?
The coach, well, other people got kicked off too, but I was like the significant player in the teams, like not having the one of the top athletes there anymore. So it wasn't just me. The coach was an alcoholic, and this was like before social media, and I remember I was so mad, and I was like, somebody listen, like it felt sexist actually too, because there were guys that were multi-sport athletes and they were super celebrated for doing both. And for me, it was like I was a bad kid. And I think it ended up being a blessing because I went through puberty super normally.
Right.
You know?
Because it screws with women's development more than men's, I think, being an endurance athlete, right?
I mean, I just think that those like 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old years for women in particular, it's when that's when we go through puberty for them, I think, for the most part. And our bones, it's like you're building the foundation of your house.
Right.
And so if there's anything compromising that, which it's not that running compromises it, but overtraining does. So I didn't do that, and I was happy little soccer player, you know, playing with boys in theater and student government. But it was devastating to get kicked off a team for something that felt unfair.
Yeah. Did your parents back you up?
So I grew up with just my dad. And he, it's all good. He's my parents. He was, okay. My dad was never gonna interfere. My dad is very conflict averse.
Okay.
So he did take a meeting with me and like the dean, I think, but they didn't, or the head of the athletic director or something, and they didn't do anything about it. And we didn't take it beyond that. Like I remember it was so unfair, and he sort of tried to help, but he didn't really, my dad wasn't ever going to take control of my life for me.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. And so
compared to most like athlete parents.
Yeah, no, he was not that. And I think he knew that I might find it again in my own time and with happiness.
Yeah.
So I think and you know, he was such a good parent in that he honored what was expanding me at the time. Like he knew better than to say, hey, Alexi, you could quit soccer and all these other things and just run. Because we all knew that was an option.
Yeah. And
everybody thought I was crazy for not doing that because I was so fast.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, she'll never run again. And then look what happened. Like it doesn't.
He gave you space to figure it out.
He knew I wouldn't do he knew that if I wasn't happy or like feeling, happy, expanded, like, I don't know what words you use for that.
Sure.
That it wouldn't matter it wouldn't amount to anything anyway. Like to feel in jail
if you hated it, you wouldn't succeed at it. So he gave you space to come back around to it.
And I think that was a very, like, I think he has a really, that's very wisdom filled of him. Totally. And then when I came back to it, I was terrible. I was so bad at it.
Just rusty?
No, out of shape. I was like in soccer shape. So I couldn't run 4 miles without walking. And I was on the Dartmouth team because they recruited based on times. But I was so bad. I was like the worst in the whole league. And then my dad was like, just keep trying. And so he also didn't really give me the option to quit.
Right.
Gently. By saying, just keep trying.
That's funny. Yeah, he let you kind of quit the first time, but then not the second time.
Yeah, but I didn't feel like I quit. I feel that I was like, I was kicked off I was kicked off the team. And he just didn't make me like compromise my values and what made me happy for a performance incentive. Right.
It's funny the memories that we have of stuff too, because like I have a vivid memory of like sort of like I was clearly acting out, right? Like that's why I was not taking it seriously. And I remember talking to a friend from high school like not that long ago, and I was like, why didn't any of the coaches just say, you're clearly acting out, you should try, you could really make a thing of this, right? And my memory is that didn't happen. And he was like, what are you talking about? He's like, they said that to you so many times. So like they saw it and tried to communicate to me what I was doing, and I just could not hear it, and I didn't even remember hearing it.
That's so interesting. Like what do you remember hearing anything at all?
No, I just remember them yelling at me. You know what? Like I just remember them being like authoritarian or, you know, no fun.
You remember the feeling of like discipline, not like the good intention underneath it, maybe.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Which is interesting because, yeah, it's like a perfume. Like you like could smell. It smelled a certain way. It like felt a certain way, and it didn't really matter.
Well, it's kind of helped me as a parent too, because I'm like, why couldn't they have just said these words? And he's like, no, they definitely said.
They
those
definitely
words.
said it. So how does it help you now?
Well, because you think like, oh, all you have to do is say this thing. It's like that coach thing where it's like, no one will listen unless they know how much you care. Like clearly there was some wall between us that was not allowing the message to get through. And so it doesn't matter what you say. It matters what people hear, and it matters what you make them feel.
Yeah.
And so it's just like your kids are going to go through things, and you're going to think you're not going to lecture them into understanding what they need to understand. It's more of an emotional thing, and it's an energy thing. And like, it sounds like what your dad did really well was kind of indirectly guide you, and you felt like you were making the decisions as opposed to being forced to do anything, or, you know, like he gave you felt like you were in control, it sounds like.
For sure. I mean, he had values, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't have very many rules at all, which was like chaotic and made my house the best place to go to after parties in high school. But he did sometimes have opinions, and so when he does have opinions, they actually carry weight. And he's repetitive, right? Like we would eat the same dinners, like whatever. He had like 5 things he cooked, but he also had like 5 things he would come back to saying. So the just keep trying. I've heard him say that so many times.
That's great.
In addition to other things, my dad, he's also been really good in adulthood in helping me realize what I really need and don't need in making decisions that can sometimes be quite confusing. He can help me really simplify. I can share more if you want, but we don't have to go down that path.
No. What do you mean? I'm curious.
Well, like, okay, like after I graduated from Oregon and knew I was going to try to chase this Olympic dream, I had 2 opportunities of how to pursue it. One was like a financial contract with a new company that was embracing me as like an artist and a runner, which I am both.
Yeah.
And they even said, if you don't perform well in running, you can still make little commercials for us. So it was like, wow, it's like a really great financial situation, creative, but it provided no coaching, no teammates, no nothing. So I would have to figure all that out, right?
Yeah.
Then the other was provided all the intangibles, coaching, team, and the best in the world. But it was a club where some support would be given to me, but it would be given straight to like my rent and health insurance. So I wouldn't actually I wouldn't save any money. And in fact, I would still have to buy food and things like that. And my dad asks really good questions. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I have college loans. I'm, all this stuff. And I'm 21. And he's like, well, do you want to make ads for a living? And I was like, well, no. And he was like, okay. He's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, which one is going to take you to the Olympics? And I was like, well, probably the world-class coaches and athletes and enough to survive in Eugene, Oregon, right? Yeah. And so it made it very simple once he asked me those questions of, well, do you want what that is? Yeah. And I talk to him when I'm making decisions like that, and he usually asks me the right questions. So he doesn't give the answers, but he does ask really good questions.
In my discipline book, I talk about Queen Elizabeth a lot. And she is so fascinating because the queen is this person of immense influence, but has essentially no power, right? Like the queen has no actual authority. She's like the figurehead, king too. But in the constitutional monarchy, it's a figurehead, but they get briefed by the prime minister and they are associated with the outcome. So it's this fascinating thing where they're both powerless and powerful. And what it was said, and I think one of her grandchildren confirmed it too, was that she had to perfect the art over 70 years of just asking questions that made it clear the problem with the stupid thing that you were about to do, or that raised the issue that would allow you to come around and see it differently. And that's like, I think parents think that they have power, but they don't. And so they try to, you know what I mean? They try to use like, do this, don't do that. And it's totally ineffectual. But the actual influence you have is in terms of like what your dad was doing, which is like, well, what about this? Or at like figuring out what your kid wants to do and telling them how they can do it is very different than you telling your kid what to do. Because, you know, there's that resistance. But if you're both trying to go in the same direction, then it's a very different interaction and relationship. But like people are bad at that. Even I've had this with editors on my books. Like, how can you give me notes if you don't know what I'm trying to do? Like, you haven't asked me enough questions for you to give me the feedback that you are giving me. And the reason you haven't asked is that you fundamentally misunderstand our relationship, which is you think I'm giving you the book you want as opposed to you buying the book that I want from me. Do you know what I mean? So
yes,
if you can figure out what the person wants, then you can be aligned. But if you have the ego or the lack of curiosity, it's going to be an adversarial relationship.
And to get to to get to what you just said, it requires stepping back a few steps, right? Because if you just look at feedback on a book granularly, it can feel like you get too in the weeds with like, why does this feel off to me? You know, right? Because you're receiving this feedback, and if you're on the surface level with it, you're just like, I don't know if I agree. But if you take two steps back, you're like, I don't know if this person understands my goal. And if you take another step back, I don't know if this person subscribes to the relationship where they're working with me for me to be myself. Right? And to really get at, and then that might connect you with like a value of yours to work in those capacities, right?
Totally.
And I think that, I've been thinking a lot about people who get steered off course because they're only at the surface level of the problem or their fear. They're dissecting they're addressing a surface level fear instead of addressing the real fear, which may be a moot point actually. Like there may not be a fear underneath it all.
Yeah, the Seneca line is, if you don't know what port you're sailing towards, no wind is favorable.
Oh, that's cool. I like all these things. I like the visual of it too.
Yes. But I think at the, like, parents, people, collaborators, bosses, employees, whatever, athletes, coaches, if you're not on the same page about where you're trying to go, you're going to have a lot of conflict and you're not going to be that effective. But if you can step back and go, where are we trying to go? Are we in agreement about where we're trying to go? Can we get an agreement about where we're trying to go? And once you get clarity about that, then you can know, hey, this feedback is actually not important, or this thing that everyone else is focused on doesn't matter. Like, where are we trying to go? If you don't have a good answer to that question. So that's why I think so interesting. Your dad was like, what do you want to do? Because comparing and contrasting two options in a vacuum is, you're just gonna be like, well, what pays more? What's more socially accepted? What seems more fun? But like, if you have a goal or a direction you're trying to go, then a lot of that is going to turn out to be irrelevant. What really matters is, like, does it get you closer to where you're trying to go or not? Right.
And it's a good way also to conflict resolve, as you were saying with the queen, because it's a way to lead from behind. Is to use a process where you start by sharing the shared goal that everyone can agree on, right? And then go to the like obvious problem that like maybe people aren't aware of, but like just observing it. And then the solution feels like we're all on the same page, because like we all want this. But this is happening. Therefore, whatever, you know?
Totally.
And it's cool because it feels like, I mean, it feels like in that, well, that feels like a life with like less resistance too.
Yeah, of course.
Which, sorry, I sometimes I get these thoughts and I was just like, I've been trying to live a life more now where I'm like, there are things wrong, but I'm trying to like make sure something's actually wrong. And I
What
think
do you mean?
I used to whatever live a life where I was chasing the singular goal.
Yeah.
And when you enter a life where you're not, you're more moving toward feelings and values, and there's less needs with that, with like a pursuit. And but along that journey, there's a lot of like bumping up against things and learning, and then like trying something and then pivoting, and that can feel really disorienting if, unlike the thing where you know where you're going, if where you're going is actually just I want to move toward growth or curiosity instead of toward like one thing.
Well, it's much easier, although the goal is hard. It's much easier to be like, I want to be in the Olympics. I want to be the highest paid person in this. I want to be the chief executive of that. Like, it's easier to have what the Stoics would call sort of externals as your goals or your metrics, right? Because it's clear and clarifying. The problem is you don't actually control whether you get that thing or not, right? And in the more artistic life, like I feel like I have no goals.
Me too.
I've working hard to have no goals. That doesn't mean I don't work really hard and I'm not trying to get better, but I am no longer interested in, I want this to debut at #1, or I want this advance to be larger than that advance, or I'm not trying to win the thing. I'm trying to do the thing. And that's a little more ambiguous and harder to define. So it's more of a day-to-day challenge than the Olympics are like a thing you get selected for. There's like a hierarchy, and then there's a clear winner and loser. But it can also break your heart because someone, like if you think the New York Times bestseller list is a meritocracy, and so all you have to do is these things, you're going to wake up one morning having, if you're lucky enough, done those things, and then find out you were unlucky enough to not get that thing. And that's going to break your heart or piss you off.
Yes.
So how do you think about having no goals then?
I think that having goals requires me and everybody to be more in your nurture than your nature, because you have to construct a path towards something highly specific that is often a human invented thing, like a best-selling book or the Olympics. And so you're really resisting I've been using this word a lot with myself, the things that compel you, like, which is unexpected stuff. And you're controlling everything. So that's you're in your nurture. And I think that, or I felt I was very much in my nurture, chasing the Olympic dream.
What do you mean by nurture?
Nurture versus nature. Nurture, like I'm creating the self, and I'm crafting. I'm literally growing muscles. You know what I mean? Sure. I'm napping myself.
You're like a specialized machine.
Yes, and I'm the experiment, and I'm doing it to myself, right? And then I think when you get away from those external goals, or you're goalless, which is what you asked about, you have the opportunity to explore more of your nature, which is the way you would move, the way you take in the world if there is no danger or no need to funnel yourself into something so highly specific that it would result in an external accomplishment that you've decided ahead of time. So to have no goals, I think, is exciting. But I think it's exciting, and I think it's like the rest of my life. And it's you're more like Alice in Wonderland or something, and you don't expect it all to be good. Right? And so, my North Star now is like more of a feeling and values. And if an external, it's always attached to external things, right? You're always doing tasks that are, associated with it. But if something gets taken away from me, there's always another way to pursue my values and my goals and my North Star.
Yeah, maybe it's like the difference between focusing on inputs versus outputs. So like, are you focused on what you're putting into the thing, or is it all about what you get to take out of the thing? Right. So like,
Yeah.
Cheryl Strayed once made this distinction in, have you ever read Dear Sugar, her like advice thing?
Yeah.
Someone was talking about like books, and she was like, you're confusing writing with publishing, or publishing with writing. Like they were focused on like publishing books, and she's like, the job is being a writer. So I think about like the verb versus noun. You know? So it's like, goalless, it doesn't mean you're just like sitting around and you don't care. It's like, no, I'm just doing the thing. I'm creating rather than trying to like achieve.
But that's what I mean by nothing's wrong, is that if you're in the process and you're waking up and living the days that you say you want to live, whatever, then there is nothing wrong. Like if a problem comes up as a result of being on that path, that's not a problem with a capital P. It's like a problem that is, of course, because it's life, right? It's like like I use a lot of like metaphors, it makes more sense to me, but I feel like having no goals is like being an adventurer in a yummy rainforest where you're wearing a big backpack that's full of all your experiences and all your knowledge, your curiosity, your values, whatever, right? And you're marching around and there's other people, but like you're on your own journey. And you expect there to be like awesome flowers and cool animals, but you also expect there to be rain, and you expect wild animals. And that to me feels like what life is now.
I remember I was hurrying my 8-year-old somewhere, like it was like a Saturday, and I was like, come on, this is like taking forever. And he was like, Dad, we've got nothing to do and nowhere to be.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh yeah, what the, like, it's first off, it's Saturday, but second, like I can do whatever I want. I don't have a boss. Like what am I trying to, what do we need to accomplish? There's nothing we need to check off the list. And there's something about like, if you're like, I got to finish this thing and get it out, or I have to win at this thing or whatever, then you're not able to just be in the day-to-dayness of like, oh, I tweaked this and I improved this and I had fun and I learned something. Like, you're confusing the inputs and the outputs.
Yeah. So, okay. The inputs and the outputs are, I think that makes sense. Is you're saying people who fixate on the outputs don't realize that like most of your life is input world anyway.
Yes.
So like just acknowledging that is helpful.
Well, the Stoic distinction would be like you control the inputs, but not the outputs. So you're focusing on the thing you're most vulnerable about. What I learned, and I've been working a lot on this, is that like, my first handful of books, like I did not have a good time doing. Like it was painful, and just because it's hard, it's a lot of work, and it's vexing, and you're struggling, and it's not as good as you want it to be, and you're fighting with your publisher about it was just like it was a brutal process. And I realized that if the process was not fun, then I was only doing it to get the rewards of the outcome, which is not in your control. So it's like, if you're only competing because you love winning, you better hope you have to win. Right? And winning is not actually up to you, because you could be against someone who's better and stronger and faster than you. You could be up against someone who cheats. The Olympics could get canceled. There's so many things that could prevent you from getting the thing. So your means to an end strategy is inherently vulnerable and inherently dependent on something other than you. But if you can get to a point where you enjoy doing the thing, and if the outcome goes your way, that's extra, that's where you want to be. That's where I'm not there. I would say, I've said this before, but I would say I went from like 90-10 to like 10-90 or whatever. Like I flipped it. Like before I was like 90% outcome oriented and 10% process. And I would say I'm like 90% input, 10% output.
Sometimes when I meet teenage girls, I meet a lot of them, and they can't seem to like, I can tell in their eyes when they really like, they trust me, but I can tell if something is like just they're not going to subscribe to it.
Yeah.
And the enjoy the journey is really difficult
Sure.
to tell teenagers.
It's easier to enjoy the journey after you've won also,
Well,
or you have any kind of external success, because either you feel good
Yeah.
or you realize it doesn't make you feel good.
Yeah. Well, do you know what I tell them then? To assume that it's going to be successful, that it's going to be what they want it to be, and how would they embrace the now
Yes.
in that case?
Sure.
Because if you think about that, if you knew you would get what you wanted, how, like, you would be more present.
Yeah, you wouldn't hate this
Right?
thing so much.
No.
Yeah.
And that is usually a harbinger of like the good result you want anyway.
Yes.
Because it's like
Sure.
because it's a inevitability is like a real energy.
Well, I think people think, hey, if I'm not focused on outcomes, I'm not going to get the outcome. But the irony is, what you're actually doing is taking your eye off the ball. Like golf to me is the best metaphor. When you jerk your head up to look at where the ball's going, you shank it. The whole point is you're supposed to have a perfect, fully present swing, and only after the ball has left the club and you have finished your follow through that you raise your head and look.
Oh, interesting.
Like you're not, it's like when you're trying to do it really well, deliberately, and trying to see if you did it well, that's when you fuck it up.
Right. I was thinking, is that the same in baseball? Because like I played a lot.
A little bit.
Is it? I feel like you have to keep your eye on the ball, but I guess once you swing,
But you keep your eye on the ball, but if you're thinking about how you're going to run to first base,
Yeah, I get it.
that's
yeah,
where
yeah.
you're fucking it up.
Yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense. Yeah, you'll trip over yourself or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's like you still have to hit it first. Like
Yeah.
hit it
Yeah.
and then like
Yes.
you're
Yes.
getting like you're creating like a traffic
Yeah.
jam or something.
Yeah, well, people get stuck all the time not being in like the chapter they're in and not
Yeah.
realizing like what train they're on
Yes.
and or what track they're on rather. And I think people get the most stuck when they're supposed to switch the train track and they know better and they don't switch, like from fitness to health. Like I see people waste so much time. Like their goal is fitness when they're
Yeah.
healthy, but the minute you realize you're injured, you got to get on the you have to get on the track of I'm trying to be healthy over fit.
Oh, sure.
I'm saying some people
Yeah.
they're not in the moment they're in
Yes.
in a in more ways than one. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know if that's the same thing. Is it the same things that we just said?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the ability to be like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Just
Yeah.
do that thing.
Yeah.
Don't like I am in writing mode, not publishing and marketing and PR mode. Like just
Yeah.
do that thing, and then when you finish this task, move on to the next task.
Yeah.
That's like what chop wood, carry water is also about.
Right. It's everything.
Yeah. Easy to say, not so easy to do.
Yeah. Well, but it's easier to I think it's easy to do once you're doing it. It just cuz it feels better. Cuz you feel
I don't know if it
aligned.
was easy to do, everyone would do it. It's like it's
Yeah. Why don't people do it?
no, because
Like why is this so hard?
I don't know. I mean, like, I think one of the reasons you focus on outputs instead of inputs is that outputs give you social validation and there's financial things. It's also measurable, right? Like the day-to-dayness of being in the thing, just like working on the project is hard to know whether you're making progress or not. But if you're just like, well, how many copies did I sell? Or, like when you're focusing on that stuff, it's more measurable and quantifiable. It's the day-to-day process of it that is like I just try to make, my thing is like, did I make a positive contribution to the thing today? So I try to like way, way, way lower the stakes.
Yeah. You're just asking for progress
Yes.
or positive contribution.
Right. But, yeah, I don't know. It is tough though. It's tough to be goalless also because people give you credit for talking about your goals and they give you credit for achieving the goals. No one's like, you really fulfilled your creative vision on this project, because that's a totally internal thing that only you know about.
Right.
You did what you set out to do. How would they know?
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me. There was a review in Variety for my first movie that was really mean about my body because I was really, I was like in Olympic shape, and there was like this would never happen today because I think
But this
this
wasn't like
man.
20 years ago.
I know, but it was but it was like they he said it was really difficult to look at my flat chest and freakishly gnarled feet. And it was so crazy because I was like, imagine writing it. But I was like, oh my God, my body made this man uncomfortable. And I was like, but that's the same discomfort. Because this is to your point about he didn't understand my goal. And I was like, oh, he felt uncomfortable. But the character feels uncomfortable in her body too. And I was like, oh, he felt, and it's not about the way it looks. It's that I was like, rad. He felt uncomfortable. And I was like, this movie is a little bit about discomfort.
Okay, I love that. One of my favorite things in reviews is when someone says negatively exactly what you set out to do.
That's what I mean. Yeah. And but as if it's a fault.
Yes.
That's exactly what happened. And I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, thank you. You know what I mean? He was like, "I just felt so uncomfortable." And like this is a girl in a movie who is trying to be romantic with a boy, but she has this, Olympic whatever, this kind of,
Sure.
not a typically hot body, I guess, in someone's terms of it, So yeah, you're right. And it's rad because because they're putting right in yeah.
But yeah, I get this all the time. People be like, all Ryan is doing is taking the ideas from the Stoics and connecting them with stories from history. And I'd be like, bro, that's like the log line of the project that I set out to do.
That's awesome.
And you're saying it negative, and what they're saying is this was not for me. And what I was saying is this is not for you. These are for these people over here. Well, they're saying this is not good, but what they don't realize is that what they're actually admitting is that it was not for them, But part of the way you have to insulate, I think, when you decide to focus on what you were trying to accomplish and your vision, and you have clarity about what that is, as opposed to just vaguely sort of following something wherever it goes, is that when you have that clarity, then you can read a negative review and take it as positive because it confirms, like he thought he was hurting her feelings or condemning the work, but you're like, you actually just, the title of your review should have been Mission Accomplished.
What's interesting about what you're saying is that you're basically saying that you need to know your own goal before you go out in the world and like receive other people's analysis of your goal. But earlier in our conversation, we were saying that we don't have goals anymore. And so I think we do have goals. It's just it's not like it's goals it's different kind of goal.
Well, they're just not external goals. That's
an internal goal.
If I had a creative vision, then I'm either going to achieve that vision or not. But if my goal is to have the number one movie, right, then someone else, so that's the distinction. You do have
goals. You have internal goals now.
Yes, but goals isn't the right word though. It's like I have things I'm trying to do as opposed to contests I'm trying to win.
Yeah.
And that like I'm focusing my energy on the parts of it that are up to me versus the parts that are not up to me. And I have clarity about what I'm trying to accomplish, which is maybe different than what I'm hoping to achieve.
That makes sense.
That's the distinction, I think. I mean, there's something so nice about sports in that they're very binary,
They're very binary, and like if someone is on the team, like I realized this recently, like if someone's on a team, you assume that they were like good enough to be there, right? Like they had to hit a certain standard, or the coach picked them, they did tryouts. And you assume that y'all have like you're aligned in your goals and it's equitable and all this stuff. And it's simple with performance, as you said. It's also simple with your orientation with other people in that world, because you're either good at the sport or not, and it's relatively clear.
Yeah.
And I think in the non-sports world, it's become very clear to me that like it's not as simple. Like the evaluation is not as simple. And so when you step into a room, there's not, I don't know, it can be complicated.
Like you're either in the NBA or you're not.
That's what I mean.
And to be a professional filmmaker or artist or influencer or creative, it's a much vaguer thing, and there's a lot of people pretending.
Yes.
And then
Yes,
a
you
lot of
said
people
it.
aspiring, and so it's harder to know where you sit in. So you have to become much more internally focused and internally driven about like what I'm trying to do, what success is for me, and then what race you're running.
Right.
Like the difference between like in a cross country race or the Olympics, it's like you all started at the same time and you're all finishing at the same finish line and you're all after the same 3 medal spots or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But like if you're just out for a run on a what's today, Thursday, like somebody started before you, somebody started after you, somebody's recovering from an injury, someone's doing it for fun, somebody's trying to lose weight. You know, like we're all running for different reasons, doing different things, and you got to have a much stronger sense of the race that you're running, or you're going to find yourself competing with this random stranger who you happen to have aligned with for 2 seconds, but like you're playing almost different sports.
Yeah, and I think it takes time alone to like hear those thoughts for yourself. And I think that's like a big thing I need to do more of, is like spend more time alone to be more and more in touch and realign and recalibrate, because sometimes my alignment will change, but I need to like notice that and then recalibrate, almost like, you know, like a Pokemon becoming like I need to evolve.
Pokemon evolution.
Yeah, it's sometimes I feel like I have to have moments where I'm like, oh, I'm no longer this, or I no longer care about these things, or my values have evolved. But if I don't take the time to like see the Pokemon evolve, I can be in my default settings in thought a lot easier.
I have an 8-year-old, so I hear a lot about Pokemon evolution. So this metaphor is funny to me.
That's awesome. I was gonna be like, I have a boyfriend. He's really into Pokemon cards too. So people don't always outgrow it. It's
hard for me with my kids because like when I was in high school, Pokemon was very not cool.
Oh wow!
So it's like you have kids,
Right.
and then they're like these things stick around in ways that you didn't like. I'm sure it was like I was into heavy metal as a kid, like 80s heavy metal. And so my parents were probably like, what the fuck is this? This is not for people, like, this is not for us, you know? And so now with my kids, I'm like, why do we have to go to these comic book stores? And like, why, you know, like they're into things that like I have preconceived notions of from what they culturally were when I was a kid.
Yeah.
One of the teenagers in the bookstore the other day was like listening to Nickelback.
Oh no,
and
because it's post-ironic.
Yes, to him it's just music that's like at this point 20 years old or whatever.
Yes.
And to me it's like, no, this is a not cool band.
Yes. No, it's post-ironic.
Yes.
Which is my favorite word to have learned from the Gen Z.
Yeah.
You know what that is, right?
Yeah, it's just it is what it is at this point.
It is. It's become, but it had to do its whole cycle. Yeah. It's so funny. There's so much post-irony right now. And maybe it's giving us a greater appreciation for things that we didn't like. Although I don't like Nickelback. I'll just say it.
No, but you realize, oh yeah, this is different. You perceived things based on the lens that was true for you at that time or was culturally prevalent, but it's not based on it's probably not some sort of blind sound test. Or where you know what I mean? If someone could give you a Nickelback song that you've never heard before, and you were perceiving it not knowing it was Nickelback, might you be like, it's not terrible,
right? You're saying its context like has informed so much of how we see things. The context. It's the same way with like even words. Like I like get so. I think now that I'm meeting more people who like did not grow up with me. Right, you meet people who's like it's a whole different. So the way that they learned certain words meant certain things, and it can cause
What's
so
an
much.
Example?
Well, an example could be the word odd. Like if someone says, "I find it odd," to me that's very like mean sounding. Like it sounds like adjacent to like bad or weird in a bad way
versus
eccentric
odd.
Odd could be like totally benign. And so I think it's just like certain words, and I was like a trained poet right in college, so like words I think they carry so much weight, and yet maybe they don't have any weight at all, because if it can mean one thing to, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's so confusing. And
I was talking to someone from California the other day, and they were like, "What's this like?" They were complaining about, the word "riz," which is short from charisma. Like, Gen Z says Riz. Like
They do? I don't know
That's what you
anything.
would say. That's what you'd say if someone is just like charisma, has good vibes. Like it's just like, you know, that person has Riz. They're like people flock to them. Or whatever. And I was like, what do you think rad is short for? Like, you
Yes.
think rad is a fucking word? You know? And they're like, oh yeah.
That's funny. Yeah.
They're like, they're just taking words and cutting them in half. It's like, yeah, that's what people do.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what we do. Because it's, yeah.
I want to talk about mentors.
Let's talk about mentors.
So you're thinking, though, not just of mentors, but the mentors of people's mentors. Like, it's interesting to me how you're chasing, like, I guess in sports they call it a coaching tree. Do you know that term?
Is a coaching tree just like that there's a lineage, like a tradition that they come out of?
Yeah, like, for instance, I read about this in my last book. I think Greg Popovich has the greatest coaching tree in sports. Like, his assistants have gone on to do the most things.
Yes.
Like Steve Kerr is one of and Steve Kerr has his own coaching tree at this point.
Yes.
Right. So it's not just like, hey, this person helped this person, but like that you really evaluate the totality of someone's career and impact, not just like on what they've done, but what they've allowed other people to do.
Yeah. And that's very true with all sports, right? Like you can running, you know, it's interesting because for individual sports, looking at coaching trees makes it feel less like these individuals are just asteroids floating free.
Yeah.
Because they really do come from, like, I could name like 2 different coaches, for example, where it's this similar, it's a tree.
Yeah.
I was going to be like, and we're like, we already have the metaphor. Stop trying to find another one. The interest in mentorship for me started as a necessity. So it's like, it comes from a real place of like, I lost my mom very young and in a confusing way because whatever, she took her own life. And I was like, all right, I don't have this one person.
Right.
And it would have been very easy and simple to say that, you know, to create laws like life is unfair. I don't have access to this mystery, this abundant mystery that is a mom, which is still an abundant mystery to me. Although Tina is like the closest thing I have to a mom.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. That's
like a surrogate parent.
I mean, yeah, she's like the coolest and grew up in the Bay Area. And now that's why I spend lots of time out here. Yeah. She's like truly like a mom figure to me. But so I had a choice to say, I don't get to have a mom and I get to have nothing else or I get to have everything else.
Sure.
You know? And so mentors to me became, you know, the word to me, it can be limiting. To me, it means anyone that you learn from.
A mentor is.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think a person becomes a mentor to you, not even if they're not aware of it, right?
No, it's so dumb. People think it's this like official thing. You know, like in apprenticeships used to be like you were basically sold as a work slave to a blacksmith or, you know, like a whatever, right?
Yeah.
And, or like to become a Navy captain, you would be like attached as a cabin boy and you would work. It was this kind of process where like, it was so horrible that like they had to legally codify it so you couldn't escape once you started. But the best mentor relationships today are very informal and they evolve over time. It's not like will you be my mentor? We're going to talk on the phone 3 times a week at 2 p.m. Like, it's not how it goes.
And they're also not your mentor unless you actually learn from them. So,
sure.
Right? Like if someone says they're your mentor, even if it's a mentor program, but you don't absorb anything, are they your mentor? Like, no, they're your mentor, just like their job title, but it's
they're
not
like a counselor or something.
Yeah. And mentor is not a job title. It's like, it's an exchange. It's a relationship that comes from, I think, feeling, you know, that you're changed by somebody, that you're impacted. So I think it really is about, you're not changed unless you really are too, right? Like it has to really feel true for you. And so I've been very interested in this subject, and I just realized that I want yummy knowledge. Like I want to learn, and I can't live like a million lives. And so I think the idea of having this mentor buffet podcast was like, now I get the opportunity to talk to people and learn from who they learned from.
Right.
And by that, I am learning about them,
Sure.
but it's a little less direct. And there's a little like nostalgia and gratitude in it, which feels fun.
Have you read, what is it? Have you read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations?
Uh,
Do you know what book one
uh,
is about? This
it's
isn't
so
a
funny.
trick question.
No, I feel like I read some of it in a class where I didn't fully read it, which is so embarrassing.
So book one of Meditations is just called Debts and Lessons. And this is his private journal. And he just takes, it's almost 10% of the book, but he just lists all the things he learned from the most influential people in his life.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I should read it, and then I should, do you sell it here at your bookstore? Yeah. Yay. I was like, I want to support the bookstore.
No, I'll give you one. I have my own edition of it. But like it's this so Marcus Aurelius, when you hear emperor, you're like, oh, your dad must have been the emperor.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened actually is there were 5 Roman emperors, or I guess 3 in a row, that don't have a male heir. So they each have to adopt. So it creates this precedent where each emperor is adopting who they think is a worthy successor. So it's just like, and in the Roman tradition, adoption often happened late in life. You could get adopted in your 40s or 50s into a family who needed to like carry on the tradition. Mm-hmm. So here's a weird one. Seneca's brother is in the Bible, but his name isn't Seneca, which is like the family name, because he is adopted by this family, and he changes his name to be them.
I feel like you're the living example of knowledge is like power. And I mean that you know so much. And I was just observing and I was like, and you're able to use all this knowledge to like contextualize and understand and then have your own thoughts. And it's just really cool. It's really cool to just hear you say things. Because I'm like, oh, he knows so much. And
I know some about some things. But anyways, the point I want to make.
I was like, you know a lot of things. No,
so there's this chain where Hadrian is not the best dude, but he sees something in this kid who would become Marcus Aurelius, but he's too young, so he can't. Hadrian knows that he doesn't have much time left, so he wants this kid to be emperor, but he needs someone to help him. And
yes, I know this. Yes.
So he adopts this older man named Antoninus Pius, who's like the dominant Roman politician of that time, on the condition that he adopt Marcus Aurelius. Right. And so the most beautiful passage in the beginning of Meditations, it's like if you watch Game of Thrones, as soon as Hadrian dies, Antoninus just kills Marcus, and then like that's how it should go. And instead, Antoninus, who was supposed to live for like a couple years, rules for the next 2 decades, and he mentors Marcus, who becomes effectively his co-emperor or his COO, and sets this kid up to become like this philosopher king. But there's this beautiful, he does another one later, but it's almost 3 full pages of everything he learns from this man who they have no blood relation to, and you could almost see as like enemies, like whose bloodline is going to make it, as one would have cared about then. And instead it's this sort of remarkable like surrogate parental relation. He refers to him as his adopted father. And I think that's so beautiful. Like, and the things that he learned, it's very clearly not things that they talked about. Like everything. He's not like, I remember the time he told me to never do this.
Yes, it's things he learned by simply watching him exist.
Yes.
Which is so much of right, because it's also interesting to know what people learn and how they learn.
Yes.
Because some people do learn best by being
Sure.
told like a coach type relationship, right? Yeah. But a lot of people do learn simply by being around people, and that's where there's a big gap in maybe access to people, right? And so that's another reason why I'm interested in it, is because can we at least give some like of the je ne sais quoi of what it felt like? Can we still share that without being in the room with all these incredible mentors? Yes. Maybe, like, we'll see. I think so. And it's cool because it seems like this is an abundant perspective to have on the world.
Yeah, it would be a
right?
shame if you could only learn from people you met and spent time in person with.
Yeah, that's almost maddening. And if you're trying to, help people feel more like present, it takes you basically away from where you are to feel like you need to go find all this
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, and like maybe it also goes back to what you were saying about there's a lot we can't control, like about the outcomes, right? And a lot of what I think I'm seeing these people that I'm talking to and what their mentors are showing them, a lot of it is not changing what they do, it's changing how they think.
Yes.
And I think that that's where we can really help people, because a lot of times we actually can't change the outcome or even the situation, right, that
Yep.
we're in, the present. But to see it differently is like a whole new universe. It's like seeing,
Yeah.
it's like oh my God, like like we probably shouldn't nerd out about this right now, but I'm writing an adaptation of a best-selling book into a movie, and I'm trying to like capture in the movie like almost like a different perspective on like the present for various reasons. But I really think there's a whole other universe like in what's happening right now, like with just how you see it. And I think that some of this mentorship stuff is about not just changing your life, but changing how you see your life.
Well, the Stoic idea is that every situation, this is from Epictetus, says every situation has two handles, one that will bear weight and one that won't. And so which you're going to, what handle you're going to grab the situation by. And I think what mentors often can help you do, whether you just won or you just experience what you think is a humiliating failure, they can be like, I went through that and I thought what you thought at first, and then I've come to understand this. And they can give you that. It's like you probably come around to that understanding eventually.
Yeah.
But maybe it doesn't need to take 10 years.
Okay, so but what is it to bear weight? Is it to feel?
He just means it'll hold, like because it's a handle, right? So it's like one, you can pick it up, and the other it'll break.
Oh, it'll hold weight. Oh my God, or bear weight.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. The approach will bear weight.
It's like one's the right handle and one's the wrong handle. And we
Right.
often grab by the wrong handle because we don't know any better.
Right. So, and that just makes me think like that just goes back to the thing I was saying about nothing's wrong, of like, okay, and things are wrong, but I mean with how we feel about situations. Sure. So sometimes there's bad pain and like you need to get out of a situation. I think that we also need to know the difference between like sensations and threats and things.
Yeah.
But if it's a sensation, if something feels off, right, which is maybe the wrong handle, some of what this mentorship stuff can do is help us find the right handle, right?
Yes.
And what I was going to ask you is, do you think then that part of our role in our own lives is to be more aware when something feels off that isn't actually a threat, like something where you're like, this should feel like there should be a different way to see this.
Yeah.
And then that's when we should either reach for a different perspective or like search for one within us.
Yeah. And then also have someone you can run shit by.
Right. Do you have that?
Yeah. So my mentor was this guy, Robert Greene, who wrote The 48 Laws of Power and Mastery. He was this great writer. I mean, he is. I'm going to call him on my drive home today because I haven't talked to him in a while. And I was his research assistant. And so I learned not just like how to do all this stuff, but then I sort of learned just like how to be a pro, like how the craft and the life works. And so, yeah, I run a lot of stuff by him. And you know what I want though? I want a sponsor. I'm not like in 12-step, but I would like a sponsor.
And what does that mean to you?
Like someone you call before you do shit.
I want that too.
Yes.
I want that too, because I feel I'm having trouble making certain decisions.
It's like,
and it can't just be my dad. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's like in recovery, you're like, hey, is this a sober decision or an addict decision?
Oh my God,
right?
I want this so badly.
There's obviously a healthier decision and a not healthy decision.
Yeah.
And it's not quite in the veering into like, oh, you have a problem with this substance or this thing. But it's like, I really could use someone who's just like, yeah, have you thought about this?
And do you mean for like across the board in your life?
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my God, I love this so much. Yeah, because like, and that's not something that you can ask of like even a therapist, because that person isn't actually even meant to help you know what to do. They're supposed to help you understand yourself. But it's like
when
and
like
neutrality and whatnot. It's not.
Mentors are I think more often than not like more successful than you. That's like there tends to be a professional or a context, right? But like in 12 step, it's like, no, this person is just more sober than you. Like
Right.
they could be a manual laborer and you could be the CEO of a powerful company, but they are better than they are further along the path than you in this domain.
I was gonna say they're a step beyond you
Yeah.
in a way.
Yes.
And in that context, it is in that way,
And they kind of don't care about any of your professional shit.
which is good.
Yeah, that's
And important, so that
Totally.
you take this one seriously, regardless of the other stuff, right? And that sort of that feels, yeah, because some of what good mentorship does is help you become less confused and know what to do, but I think become less confused and have more access to like yourself.
totally.
Wow, I want one of those too.
Well, if I find one, I'll let you know.
Yeah, because that would be so cool. Because like, if someone is just gonna respond to this and be like, "That's called a friend,"
Yeah,
like that's just called a friend, or like that's
but
what
it's not. It's different than friendship. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I call my friends for these
Yeah.
things, but tell me how you think it's different than friendship.
Well, I think friendship has like a social component where you have fun together, and you do, this is just a like hurt people helping hurt people or something. You know what I mean? This is just like.
And
This is
do you imagine it's a equitable exchange, or is it?
No, I think well, I think about this with mentorships. There is a reciprocity in mentorships, but mostly you don't pay your mentor back, you pay it forward.
Yes, that's
So
right.
I think
that's right.
it's like this person is helping you and they're getting you to a place, and then you have to be that to someone else. It's not, and I think there's a reciprocity more in friendship that would not be in this hypothetical thing I'm describing.
Yeah. And what would this kind of mentorship help you with most? Like, what does it help? Why does it feel so?
It would just help you be a fucking person, which is hard.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Just like be a person in the world and not, I don't know.
Because they know more than you in this case? Like, are you talking about,
Yeah.
Okay, they have wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
Right.
an exchange of wisdom.
And perspective and
Yeah.
all that. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I want one of those things too. Those things. I want one of those dynamics in my life. And
Me too.
I mean, it can be very disappointing too when you outgrow a mentor.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause
Sure.
I was
Or
thinking,
just in one domain, you're like, oh,
yeah.
I can't ask you about this stuff anymore.
Yeah. Do you feel like
Robert, you want to go check out some books in the bookstore and we can talk about
Yeah.
this more? Because I have some
Yeah.
books I want to show you.
yeah, I would love that.